Hi, first grade. It is time to read Magic Tree House. So, Jack and Annie are in the Arctic where it is super duper cold, and they have met a seal hunter. They're visiting him inside of his igloo, and Annie goes outside with him to help him feed the dogs. And Jack hears the dogs growling and barking, so he is really worried about Annie. Chapter 5 is called You're It. The dogs were barking wildly at two small creatures playing in the moonlight. Polar bear babies, cried Annie. Oh, so cute. One roly-poly cub leaped onto the other. Then they both rolled through the snow. Hi, little bears, Annie called. The cubs jumped up and shook themselves like wet puppies. Do you ever see that? Like after Roscoe takes a bath, he to shake off all the water. Then they scampered toward Annie, who rushed to greet them. Hi, 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 she called. Wait, said Jack. Where's their mother? He looked around for the mother bear, but she was nowhere in sight. Maybe they're orphans, he thought. That means they don't have any parents. Jack looked back at Annie. She was wrestling with the little bears in the snow. She was laughing so hard that she couldn't stand. Jack started laughing too. He carefully put the bear masks into his backpack. Then he ran to join Annie. Remember, he has the polar bear masks that the seal hunter had carved. She was running with the cubs across the snowy tundra. One of them raced to her, tagged her, and then raced away. Annie ran after the bear and tagged him back. You're it, she said. Jack and the other cub joined in. Soon, Jack and Annie and the two baby polar bear cubs were all chasing each other over the moonlit snow. They ran until the two cubs fell down ahead of them. The cubs laid perfectly still, panting like, Jack and Annie stared at them. Are they hurt? Annie wondered. Jack and Annie ran to the cubs. Just then, they leaned down to see if they were all right. The cubs jumped up. They pushed Jack and Annie over and scampered away. They were pretending, said Jack, and he laughed. Jack and Annie charged after the cubs. They ran over the white tundra until they came to a frozen sea. Jack looked around. Wow, we're pretty far from the igloo now. So here are the baby polar bears and Jack and Annie. We're pretty far from the igloo now. I don't hear the huskies anymore, the dogs on the dog sled. Maybe we should go back. In a minute, said Annie. Look! The bear cubs had scooted up a snowbank, like a big pile of snow. They were on their backs, sliding down onto the ice-covered sea. Jack and Annie laughed. It's like sledding. Let's try it. So I think that's what they're doing in the picture, is they're sledding down the side of the snowbank, because that's what the polar bears were doing. Okay, said Jack, but then we have to go back. Jack followed Annie up the snowbank. He clutched his backpack in his arms. He held it tightly. Annie lay on her back. She whooped as she slid down the ice. Jack followed her. Watch out below, he shouted. The little bears were sitting at the bottom of the snowbank. One gently whacked Jack in the face with her furry paw. Then she lay down. I'm tired too, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Let's rest for just a minute. Jack and Annie looked up at the orange moon as they lay beside the bear cubs. All they could hear was the wind and the soft breathing of the cubs. That was fun, said Annie. It was, said Jack, but we'd better head back to the igloo. The seal hunter is probably looking for us. Plus, we still have to solve the riddle. Jack rolled onto his side and tried to stand. Crack! Uh-oh, he said. He went back onto his knees. I think we're on thin ice. So they were rolling down the snowbank, and they were sliding onto where it used to be like an ocean and water, but it's all frozen. So they're on the frozen water, and now it's cracking underneath them. What do you mean? Said Annie. She started to stand up. Another crack. Uh-oh, she said. She carefully lay back down. The polar bear cubs moved closer to Jack and Annie. They made little crying sounds. Jack wanted to cry too, but he took a deep breath. Let's see what our book says. He reached into his backpack for the Arctic book. He took the masks out first and handed them to Annie. I took these from the igloo by mistake, he said. As he started to reach for his Arctic book, he heard the loudest crack of all. Crack! We're not even moving and the ice is cracking, said Annie. Just then, there was a new sound. A low, snorting sound. It came from the top of the snowbank. Jack looked up. Staring down at them was a giant polar bear. The polar bear mother, whispered Annie. Do you think that Jack and Annie are going to be okay? They're on ice that is cracking underneath them, and now the mom polar bear has come back. We'll find out on Monday when we read chapter number 6, Flying Bears. Thanks for reading with me, first grade. We only have 4 more chapters, and then we'll be all done with Magic Tree House number 12. Goodbye.